What's up, wrestling fans, trading card collectors? Welcome to another episode of Wrestling with Cards. Today we've got the Great Curator, Dan Nguyen, on the show for an interview. Known as the Great Curator, that title is not to be taken lightly. Dan has built a great collection of variety and goodness. High-end sports, rare Marvel PMGs, and of course, wrestling. Dan and I get together to talk about a lot of things such as precious metal gems, for those of you who don't know. You're going to get a crash course on those, and about why they are so important to the hobby, not only wrestling, but Marvel and other sports cards. I spoke of Marvel. We also talk about something I've brought up numerous times that you've probably seen on here, the parallels between Marvel and wrestling cards. We also talk about being involved and active in the hobby community, creating content, and much more. I'm really excited for you guys to watch this. Dan has a great mind, and I'm hoping that you will learn a lot, especially those who maybe you're struggling with finding your way in collecting, or you don't know how to level up to those big cards that you see flashed around everywhere. Again, hopefully a teaching moment, and this will help you guys out. What is up? Dan Nguyen, the Great Curator, and his famous painting behind him that we always see in the video. I'm not going to let that go. What's up, man? How are you doing?
Hi. I'm doing good. Thank you. Thank you for having me on your show.
Finally, glad to have you on. Other content creators, I watch your guys' shows, and I'm like, they just said something interesting. I'm going to have to get them on the show. But then, obviously we're going to talk about some other stuff. So for anybody unfamiliar with you, just give everybody a brief background of how you got started collecting anything in the first place.
Okay, well, I'm the Great Curator. My name's Daniel, but I go by the Great Curator on Instagram and YouTube. And I've been a collector, man, ever since I was a little kid. I was always collecting toys, comic books, cards, you name it. I've come in and out of the hobby throughout my life, my adult life, but now I've been back in it like full time the last year and a half, going on almost 2 years. I'm trying to make a thing about this. So, focusing on creating content. I've been doing the content for about I don't know, 6 months. So 6 months or so on that end, but that's basically how I got back into it. And I got back into collecting. I always collected as for the love of it. When these things started to, be worth something, and then I got back into it like more on an investment focused side. And I've never looked back the last year and a half, 2 years.
There's a lot of parallels between me and you that we're going to get into. So when you, I guess, started collecting, or maybe you just started this way, at what point did you start collecting the stuff that many people like to call the stick and ball sports? When you talk about collecting cards, everybody's like, oh, you collect baseball. I'm like, no, there's tons of other stuff out there. So did you start off collecting kind of the oddball stuff, or was it just everything from the get-go? How did that evolve?
Okay. I've been waiting to have this conversation with you because I think that you are the only person that is going to understand these references that I'm going to make, because they're so obscure. Okay. So go 2020-ish, right? I got back into collecting. Well, I got back into watching wrestling in 2018. Okay. After I grew up watching the 90s Attitude Era, got out of it for 20 years, then got back into watching wrestling 2018. Okay. Because wrestling so much, I was so consumed with finding wrestling content to consume that it turned me on to the Major Figure Wrestling podcast.
Yep.
Okay. Listening to that podcast with those guys, Zach Ryder, Brian Myers, right? They had a gentleman, his name's Jeremy Pradauer, on there at one point to interview. He's a toy maker, if people don't know who he is. He's a very famous toy maker. Okay. He was responsible for the Jax Classic line and everything like that. Anyways,
now responsible for the AEW figures.
AEW, right? Yes. So so they're talking to him about collecting, and they're saying, okay, besides figures, what do you think is a good collectible? And he's like, you know what? I think something's very underrated right now is high-end vintage wrestling cards. That's what he said. Just one sentence, and he left it at that. That resonated in me because I used to collect cards, and at that time I was collecting wrestling figures. And I was like, oh, okay, let me look into this real quick here, but I didn't really pay too much attention to it. Anyways, I'm collecting hardcore wrestling figures, got 100, over 100 in my collection that I've amassed in a short period of time. And then my wife says to me, you're taking up a lot of space. A lot of these things you don't even have on display. They're just sitting in a box. Are they worth any money? And I'm like, yeah, they're worth I paid $20 for it. Maybe they might be worth $30, whatever. And she's like, can you, maybe invest in something a little bit more that holds value, or can it pay more? And she's like, don't you like comic books and things like that? And I was like, oh, And in my mind, I was like, oh, she just gave me the go ahead. So I started researching comic books, and then that got me down the great comic the graded comic book rabbit hole. Then from there, I transitioned into sports cards because that's what I used to collect as a kid also. And then from there, I transitioned to oddball stuff because that was just more appealing to me. And I remembered what Jeremy Padawer said. So I started collecting wrestling, Marvel, just whatever stuff I can find. And then that's kind of like where I've kind of made niche in the community. And that's where I am now.
Very similar parallels between me and you is that we've always been collecting something. It might be this or that, but one way or another, we're always trying to get into something that we both enjoy. So speaking of that, I think I ran into you. I'm not sure if you posted a video, a picture, if it was on YouTube, but I saw that Hogan PMG and I'm like, this guy gets it. So tell that story, because when I first started talking about that card, there was a lot of people in the wrestling card community. They're like, that card's ugly. I hate that bright pink. I hate the image. I'm like, guys, you do not understand PMGs. So let's just talk about first, before we talk PMGs, how you got into that Hogan card.
Okay. Can I grab it real quick?
Yeah.
Okay, give me a second. So I will also credit you with this. I'll credit you and Brett McGrath from Stacking Slabs.
Thank you.
I think maybe you guys were talking to each other on one of your podcasts or something like that. But you guys, because again, I was looking for wrestling card content to consume, right? And I listened to you guys, and you mentioned it just like casually, saying like, this is one of the grails to get, right? Hogan PMG. And I knew what PMGs were, but again, I also thought they were ugly too, because I never had one before. But I was like, oh, Hogan PMG, it's rare, collectible. Let me look for it, right? So I started searching for it, and I have it right here. Here, actually. Boom.
There it is.
Yeah, I started searching for it. I found this one raw. I remember distinctly. I was coming back from the National Sports Convention, and I was on the airplane, and this popped up on eBay. Buy it now. And I said, oh my God. And I swooped it up right away. And this was my first PMG. And then when I got this in hand, I was looking at it, and yeah, like people say it's an old photo of him, and they say it's pink or purple or whatever. But I was looking at it, and I was like, damn, this is cool. If you've never held a PMG in your hand before, it hits differently. Okay, when the light reflects off of it, you can't just really appreciate it from looking at it on the screen. Put it in your hand.
Right.
Anyway, so I got this, and this just led me down the PMG rabbit hole, which is another niche that I've kind of become known for. Since then, I have picked up 2 other Hogans, and I'm just stacking these. And then it was a funny story. I learned that this is from a 2013 employee exclusive 6-card set where they have other iconic guys in it. So I actually picked up the whole set. Here's Rory McIlroy. Here's Oscar De La Hoya. Here's very rare Michael Phelps. And the big guys that everybody talks about.
Tiger and Tyson.
And
yep.
Yes, Mike Tyson. So I got the whole set. I got the whole matching serial number set too. This is all number 32 series. I got it from a collector. So
that's
it's
wild.
Probably like one of my pride and joys of my collection here. And then through this, I started collecting other PMGs like basketball and Marvel and things like that.
So for anybody that's watching this, that I know we don't have, there's another, I'm going to call it a wrestling PMG, and you may already know about it, but I'm going to talk about it in a minute. Before we get into that, this Hogan PMG is really the only wrestling one that exists currently. Now with AEW having Upper Deck license, or Upper Deck having the AEW license, I should say, and with Upper Deck's connections with the Skybox PMG, we see them in the Marvel products. Hopefully there's going to be some AEW. I know me and you are holding out for the AEW PMGs, but for any wrestling fans out there who don't understand the lineage and the importance of PMGs and what they are, despite them being ugly or not liking the image, what could you tell the wrestling community about that?
Okay, so here's what I know about it, all right? So PMGs came out of a basketball set. I think it was 96 or 97 flare metal, right? The first PMGs don't look like these. They're silver. And nobody really counts those as being PMGs. The next year, 97, that's when they came out with the multicolor ones, red,
and green,
blue, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and at that time, I think they were popular at that time, but then they became like kind of like they kind of faded away over the years for collectors. All right. And then they came out with PMGs the subsequent years, but they look different. But everybody always, when you think of a PMG, you think of this distinct design where it's just a picture and then one like metallic color in the background. And then over the years, those 97 PMG basketball ones, they made football also, but the football ones are less popular. But the basketball ones have some reason they've commanded, they've appreciated incredibly, and they command a lot of money. Like, just to give you an example, nobody players like Bryant Reeves, Big Country Bryant Reeves, nobody knows who that is. His PMG will go for like a couple $1,000s, right? A Steve Nash, I think it's green or blue or something like that.
I think it was
over 100,000.
Yeah, it was a green.
Yeah, it just went for over $100,000, and that's Steve Nash. So like they become like legendary, legendary brand. And then the company that made them, Flair, they went out of business. They went bankrupt or something. Upper Deck bought the brand, and they have all their licenses. So then they bring back PMGs for basketball, I think in 2011 or 12 or 13 or something like that, with the Flair retros. And then those were like a miss too, because people don't like sports and collegiate jerseys for some reason. So those kind of sat there for a while, and they're still pretty affordable. But then Marvel started making them, because Upper Deck has the Marvel license also. So they started making their PMGs in 2013, and they made them like the other year, I think 2013, 15, 17, whatever. And again, like they weren't really that popular until like maybe a year ago when people started buying them up, and now they're like the hottest thing out there.
Right.
And now that Upper Deck has a license, they make hockey ones too, but I'm not a big hockey collector.
Me neither.
So. Yeah. So hopefully they'll make the AEW ones, because now they have the license for that. So we'll see.
Yeah, I just wanted to get that out there because, again, there are a lot of people, no disrespect to the wrestling card community, because it's the best, honestly. But most of those guys in there, a lot of them don't go outside the bubble and don't understand kind of the importance and lineages of sets and certain cards within sports. So as we kind of get into the PMGs, the only other wrestling one that I know of is the Drax from the movie.
Okay.
The Batista.
Yeah.
I swept the floor of those the other night. There's only a couple of them that were under $100, and I was like, I'm just going to pick them all up.
Ooh, that's an interesting play.
Yeah, that's what I was like. And it's kind of a color match to the Hogan. It's very similar color. So I'm going to be happy to get those. We'll get those in a slab. But I want to talk about the parallels between Marvel, which is totally up your lane, and wrestling. I've been screaming this from the mountaintops since day one, that wrestling cards are Marvel. They're Pokemon, they're character driven and card rarity, card image driven. So you play in both worlds, you sell a lot of both, and you collect a lot of both. So what do you think the parallels are between the two, if I'm right or if I'm wrong? And why do you think that the wrestling cards haven't picked up to the same level as the Marvel or Pokemon, even though they're kind of the same type of thing?
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. So in terms of parallel, I look at it as an IP brand, right? Okay. Marvel, huge IP, comic books, toys, movies, TV shows owned by Disney. Wrestling, when we talk about wrestling, I'm going to talk primarily about WWE. WWE. That's been the big boy for the last 30 years, right? Mm-hmm. Also, huge IP, toys, TV shows, pay-per-views, all that stuff, huge fan base, right? But when we talk about the context of cards, it's a different niche category. And I'll give you an example of this, okay? I went to a comic book convention looking for Marvel cards. I didn't find one Marvel card there. An entire comic book convention, no Marvel cards. So that tells me that the fan base for that, they have specific things they collect. So for wrestling, it's probably like wrestling figures, right?
It is, yeah.
Things like that. So they have the fan base is there. The IP is strong, right? But the knowledge of collecting a certain type of product has not transitioned to cards yet. With Marvel, it's there. It's there for the taking. And what it took for Marvel to get up into the next level is for some big sales or some celebrities or something to happen that would validate cards as being a legit collectible in that category. Before, people probably thought cards were useless, right? Outside of the card community, everybody thinks cards are useless.
Still,
they're only worth money to card collectors. Okay, same thing with the Marvel, right? Marvel, people who love Marvel, they they think cards are for kids or whatever. They don't view them as a collectible. Same way that you might view like I don't know, those like cheap toys that you get at Target. They're not like super collectibles, not like the elite figures, right?
Right.
Right. So, but all it takes is somebody to validate that as being collectible, and then people take notice. And then when people take notice, the demand for the product goes way up. And then that's when it overtakes the current supply. And then that's what makes it a legit collectible that has value. So that's what's happening in Marvel. Wrestling has not got there yet. It kind of did last year with the 82 All-Stars, right? But for the most part, I would say people are not collecting wrestling cards because they don't view them as like a legit collectible. And it's going to take something to happen. Either somebody's got to really talk it up like you, right? Talk it up, bring a lot of attention to it, or like some famous celebrity or some golden auction to close on a card and bring attention. And then once people see that these things can have value and they see how underpriced it is, they're going to jump into that market too, which I do predict will happen at some point.
Yeah, I think we're just going to have to just do even more to get that spotlight, because as you said, like things popped in my mind as you said it. The influencer that's going to talk about this, Gary Vee's been talking about wrestling cards forever and posting them. And then as far as the sales, we've seen several rock cards hit record prices on major auction platforms. But then when the mainstream hobby talking heads talk about it, they mention the sell and then just kind of pass over it. So I'm with you. I agree. It's just going to take a lot of that. And I always say it on every show, like, I want the wrestling cards to be respected. I'm not doing this to like sell everything I have. So
it's going to happen. It's going to happen because I do card shows every week. I have boots on the ground. Everybody that walks by my table, they look at my Marvel and they look at my wrestling. They love the nostalgia of these wrestling cards, Hogan, Macho Man, The Rock, Stone Cold. They love that stuff. They might not be like wrestling fans now, okay, but everybody was a wrestling fan in the 90s, basically. So they love that, and it will take some time before they see value in these cards and they'll start spending money. But I do get that feeling that it will come at some point. And it's going to take somebody like Gary Vee or Jeremy Pradauer to talk about it, or I don't know, maybe I'll start talking more about it on my show or something like that. But it's gonna happen. So if anybody who's watching the tip for the day, I would suggest go out and get whatever cards you want because they are dirt cheap compared to anything else out there.
Yeah, absolutely. What you hit on something I like to keep driving home to people, and that's who do I've talked to a lot of people, whether it's on the shows or on Twitter, Instagram, whatever. And they're like, where do I start? What do I buy? And I'm like, you're going about this the wrong way. Who do you like? Did you like you don't have to be a fan of current product to be into wrestling cards. I mean, look at vintage baseball. That's another really good comparison for parallels. Like half the people that are into vintage baseball didn't even get to see these guys play, nor do they go back and watch past games because they're like from the 30s or the 40s and there's no video footage of it. Wrestling's the same way. You, in my opinion, you grew up liking Hogan, liking The Rock, liking Steve Austin. You want to go back even further. Maybe you were like a 70s, 80s kid and you like Jerry Lawler or you like Bruno Sammartino. Whoever it is, like there's cards out there for them. You don't have to be involved in current products. So I agree with you. I think that's something that's going to get people to go into them. And another example I'll use for that is like with the Marvel stuff. I grew up loving Marvel and loving the cards, but the Punisher is my guy. Like that's my character. So I focus on Punisher cards, and while all these other cards, whether it's modern or vintage within Marvel, they're all cool. But I mean, sure, if I can get one to resell it or something to pay for something else, that's fine. But I don't focus on that. I focus on what I actually like, whether it's a base card, whether it's a PMG. So I just want to get that out there because you mentioned it.
Yeah, and I'll give your viewers a tip. Okay, if you guys want to try to go down the rabbit hole, here's what I suggest. Pick your favorite guy. Let's just say it's Hulk Hogan. Okay, pick your favorite guy, Hulk Hogan. Go on YouTube, watch some old Hulk Hogan footage of his entrance. Listen to the music so you get like pumped up, right?
Yep.
Watch some of his highlights when he's like body slamming Andre Giant to get you like all motivated. And then you're going to feel so nostalgic that you're going to want to get some type of little representation to hold in your hands to make you feel like to connect you with those memories. Then you'll probably buy a wrestling figure, and then you can start getting into cards. You can get like raw cards for like pennies pennies
Right.
basically of Hogan. Or if you want to step it up, get something nicer, you can get a Hogan graded card, and you just go down that rabbit hole, and you'll be surprised where it leads you, right? And then
Right.
you'll be looking at other guys that you love, Macho Man or Stone Cold or The Rock, whatever. But that's what I would suggest. Start on YouTube, watch those highlights, because that's exactly what I did. I was watching like those old intro videos of like Ultimate Warrior and Hogan, and it just got me so fired up that it led me down that crazy rabbit hole.
It's a lot of fun. And you said something else that I've talked about before is, I'm kind of tying some things together here. We're jumping all over. You mentioned earlier when you set up at shows, Marvel, maybe your oddball stuff. I've seen you show some stuff of that off, and then wrestling. That's the stuff that gets people to stop their pattern interrupt, as Brett McGrath likes to say. Do you think people are getting kind of tired of the traditional sports cards from what you're seeing? And one reason I want to say that is we like our modern stars, right? But unless you have some kind of attachment, like what we just talked about Hogan, like me and you will go back and watch wrestling from the 80s, the 90s, even the 2000s, maybe even before that, whatever we can find on YouTube or Peacock or what other kind of streaming wrestling platform. I don't see a lot of people within sports cards talking about that. And I'm almost wondering if there becomes a little bit of a disconnect sometimes where they don't, maybe it's more of a transactional mindset as far as the cards than it is the nostalgia and the like memories that card holds. Just talk a little bit about that mindset.
Yeah, I would say just from my experience at shows, the majority of the community, they're focused on profit, right? And when they think about profit, they think about like modern cards. If you go to any card show, you will see a sea of chrome cards out there. It doesn't matter what company makes it. They're all shiny, they're all chrome, whatever, right? And people are buying up these new stars because they watch the sport, but more so, I think that they're speculating that these athletes will do well and the card will go up, and that's what makes the hobby fun for them. And that was like the driving factor for the hobby when all the prices were going up every week. But since mid last year, right, when the prices started going down, people were having a harder time making profit, and then it became more of a grind for them. So I think because of that, they were looking for alternatives, right? They were looking at like vintage cards. They were looking for alternative sports that still had growth, like soccer, things like that, or UFC or F1.
Yeah,
F1 was a big one, right? So they're kind of shifting away from that. And I think that they're getting smarter too, where they're realizing, hey, I shouldn't be buying these base cards. I should be looking for like numbered cards, auto cards, things like that. And they're shifting their mindset. And I think that's also helping these niche areas, because now people are looking for like the next emerging market, whether it's F1's already passed, but like whether it's UFC or wrestling or Marvel or whatever, people are kind of shifting their focus towards that, and they're getting away from all the major sports. I mean, people still collect football, basketball, baseball, all that stuff, but I would say that's definitely not the dominant category anymore, just because it's hard to make money with those things.
Hope you guys are enjoying this video, and how awesome is that ship painting behind Dan? What do you guys think? I think he needs to NFT that thing. That'd be sweet. Own a piece of the Great Curator's ship painting. Let's get it done. But anyway, if you're enjoying this video, I just wanted to take a second to talk about a few ways that you can help show your support for my content. You're already here. The easiest thing you can do is hit that subscribe button and give me a like. It's one of the best ways to get these videos into more collectors' eyes. And while you're at it, tell somebody about the show. Copy the link of the video, paste it, send an email, social media, you can tag me in it. Check out the podcasts I'm involved with, the Wrestling with Cards podcast, which is my solo podcast, as well as the Worlds Collide podcast, myself and Tony Vella getting together to talk about all things wrestling cards. Those can be found on all popular podcast platforms, no matter what you use. And once you find it, please subscribe and give us a like and a review. Tell somebody about the podcast. Check out the Wrestling with Cards Patreon community page, where for as little as $1 a month, you can help show your support to all of the content I'm doing. You can get your name in the credits of these videos, which you'll see at the end, and you can see in the show notes currently. And there are other tiers that offer bonus access and much more. Links to my eBay store, links to my social platforms, and of course, links to buy me a coffee if you so choose. I actually have a hot coffee today, no iced. A little bit different today, so not sure what's going on there. But again, if you want to show your support, links to everything I've mentioned are in the show notes. But let's get back to Dan, and let's get back to checking out that awesome ship painting he's got. Do you think that's bad overall for, I guess, other aspects of the hobby, collectors, whatever. I know there's a lot of people, which we'll get into, I'm sure, in a minute. There's a lot of people in the wrestling card space that don't like that flip mentality, the buying, the transactional, whether, I think we're on the same page in that, a lot of times we sell a lot of stuff to then buy more stuff. That's how I've gotten to the collection that I have. But I think the sports card mainstream that we see, people doing deals with money on the top of the counters and, all these cards being flashed around. I think that leaves a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. What is your opinion on that?
Okay. I think if you're a true collector, yes, that stuff is off-putting, right? But let's be real. Okay, let's be real. The more money that gets into the hobby is what makes the hobby interesting. It's what draws young people in. Okay, there have been statistics and studies have shown that before the big boom in 2020 or 19, whatever, the majority of the sports collecting hobby was just like old men that were aging out of the hobby. They're not young kids that were collecting it. We didn't think it was cool. We played video games, we collected toys, things like that, right?
Right.
So the fact that young people are coming into the hobby, or people that collected before and now they're in the 30s, 40s, whatever, they're coming in the hobby and they're spending their money that they have, that's a good thing for the hobby. The only people, and maybe I'll get heat for this, the people that don't like it are the people that want to keep everything for themselves, right? But that's just a very, very small minority. If these cards are not worth money, they're not interesting, okay? Right. Money, profit is the number one priority for a lot of people out there, and that drives the hobby. That makes PSA expand their operation. That makes these pop-up companies like I'm helping this company right here promote themselves, slab mags, right? Mm-hmm. They make protections for your slabs. That makes these companies pop up. That makes marketplaces like PWCC Golden expand so that they can compete with eBay. Companies like Fanatics coming in, buying these licenses and promoting behind them, right? Expansion is good for the hobby. If we want the hobby to grow, if we want new innovations, new products, and we want our collections to be valued, right? We need to accept that change. Now, a lot of people may get priced out, okay? And they may have to shift their priorities for what they collect into another lower tier category, but that's just how it is, guys. A lot of people I know that were collecting before, they made big money and they cashed out, and those people are not complaining. Okay,
right?
It's only the people that are trying to cash out now that can't get the cards that were available before. Those are the people that are complaining. And I'll give you an example. See here. Okay, check this out here. Johnny Cena Funko Pop. This thing worth less than $5, probably, right? Nobody cares about this. I couldn't give this away. You know what I mean? If I put this on my table, nobody's gonna buy it. I have to give it to a little kid who wouldn't even appreciate it. But if this became super collectible and this is like $100 pop, better believe everybody's gonna want it for that reason. The value. Right. The value is what makes it interesting. And a lot of people are trying to be like purist or pure hobbyist and things like that, but let's just be real, like the value is what makes them feel special too. So I don't think that we should shy away from that at all. I think we should embrace it. Now there are some ugly sides to that too, like people who put profit first, maybe flippers who are bad actors who take advantage of people. Like you've seen some of those news where there's like a fake Pokemon box, things like that. There's an issue with the group submitters that couldn't come through with that. So there are bad things that come with that. But overall, I don't think that anybody who's been in the hobby the last 2 years has regretted the progression that we've seen. And anybody that's like very bullish on collecting cards, they don't want it to stop. They want it to just keep going, keep going, and keep going.
Yeah, great points. And I can give you an example that I think people should do, and that's find a perfect middle ground, because I bought I was way into Marvel PMGs way before you started talking about it, and I sold them way before. Like, I did well, but I sold them way before the boom. On the flip side, I'm still sitting on my favorite Punisher that I kept, and I'm not selling it because I like the card. Like, I don't care how much money it's worth right now. You know as well as I do, I could sell that thing for a ton right now, and I'm not going to do it because I love the card. And then on the same token, I've got cards that are worth like 50 cents. I love those just as much as I love the PMG. But then on the flip side, I actually, at the time of this recording, missed out on a Karrion Kross card I needed to add to my Super PC because I was buying someone else's collection. So then that collection I can flip to then maybe go buy more. That's kind of the cycle that I like to run. And I know you do something a little bit similar, but I think there's just a happy balance between all of this that makes the entire hobby ecosystem work that we've talked about.
Yeah, I mean, the hobby cannot be all about spending money, buying stuff, right? We just like there has to be value in the things that we collect, so that when we're done enjoying them, we can move them to somebody else who can enjoy it. We can realize the profit from that and put it into something else. Like with your Punisher, for example, right? Who knows how much that's worth? But like if you had like the chance to get the best carrying cross card out there, you might be in a position where you want to move the Punisher in order to acquire that card, and you're gonna be thankful that you have that option, right? Whereas like with a lot of cards, like they're worth pennies, right? I mean,
like especially in the speculation area.
Once we're done enjoying them, we have to give them away, right? So it's always better to have that option that we can sell these things because they hold value. The way that we value it, we want other people to also value it the same way. And I'll give you another example too, like with wrestling, for example. Wrestling is like criminally underrated right now. I see the 5-timers club, right?
Yeah, the great insert set.
Okay, take your pick, whoever you want. Triple H, Batista, Booker T, whatever. Take your pick of the guy that you like. You can get those cards for dollars. Dollars, gold refractors, numbered, auto, right? And I guarantee you, one day they're gonna start popping off the shelves, and then people are going to be complaining because they couldn't acquire it at that time. But like they're sitting on eBay right now, people want to give those things away. So like, take advantage of those opportunities. If you see something you like, go grab it. Don't grab it just because suddenly it becomes valuable and now you feel like you missed out.
Right. Yeah, that's like those Batista PMGs I talked about earlier. Like I saw them. I don't see them pop up very often. I saw that there wasn't very many available at the time, and I was like, this is kind of cool. It's a color match with the Hogan. It's not numbered, but who cares? They're not popping up very often. So I was like, I'm just going to take a chance, and guess what? If it doesn't work out, I didn't go broke buying it, and it's a cool thing to have.
Yeah, and I'll give you a parallel example of that too. Like people might think, oh, that doesn't count as a wrestling card. That's not Batista. There's no value in that. Well, tell that to the people that own that Bumblebee Rock Miami card, right?
Yeah,
it's a football card from his college days that was part of a can of tuna promo. And that thing goes for tens of thousands of dollars now. So you never know what the next thing will pop up. So you got to look for those like obscure connections to those guys.
We touched on a few of these things, but one thing I've been trying in 2022 to do is get a lot of people that know wrestling cards. But again, they operate on the outside of the bubble, so to speak. We've mentioned a few of these things, as I said. What's some other things, and this could be one thing or it could be 10 things, just kind of whatever you're thinking, that you've seen that is a successful strategy that works for sports cards and ancillary stuff, whether that's sets to look at or whether that's just mindset on how to operate, buying, selling, trading, whatever. What's some successful tips that you've seen work in sports cards that you think could be brought into wrestling and help people build their collections out that say, hey, I'm priced out?
Okay. I'll give you an example of what's happening with Marvel right now. Okay. So the biggest part of the pie are sport collectors, and sport collectors want to go into different categories, but again, they don't see the value in those categories yet. So the first thing that they do to get their feet wet is they look for crossover brands. That's happening with Marvel right now. PMGs. Okay. The next thing with PMGs are going to be like the Platinum Portraits or the Jambalayas, things like that, right? Yep. Oh, I know that from basketball. I know that from baseball, whatever. I know that brand. It's cool to have a Marvel character on that branded card. I will go into that, right? So then they go to that. And then they apply the same things that they do in the sports category, where they look for autographs. They look for numbered parallels, things like that, just rare stuff like that. And then they start getting the cards graded, high grades like that. I think that will be the same thing with wrestling. We couldn't really do it before. Wrestling has Topps. They have Topps Chrome. They have Topps Refractor. Now that Panini has the license, they're, who knows? They'll make Prism Silvers. They'll make
the Prism Golds are going to be nuts.
Yeah. Maybe they'll do like Flawless. Can you imagine Flawless Hulk Hogan on card auto, something crazy like that, right?
Right.
So when they see those crossovers, they will associate the value with the brand of the card, and they'll see the subject matter of their favorite wrestler, and then they will start investing in that. So that's a good way to transition over. And AEW is the same way. If they're upper deck, maybe they'll make PMGs. Maybe they'll make Exquisite.
Yeah, that's what I was.
Something like that. So when that happens, then we will see some big movements.
What are you seeing a lot of people at at the shows and your table kind of cross trading different things? Because that's another thing that I like to do is, something will hit me one day. I'm like, okay, I want this, I want a Jordan rookie. I want, a 58 Jim Brown. I want PMG. I want, some kind of random oddball non-sport card, Chevy Chase autograph, whatever it is. Are you seeing a lot of people that kind of cross trade like that? Because I've tried to do that with the wrestling card space, and it seems like a lot of people are just like all wrestling or nothing.
Well, I think wrestling fans are very hardcore, for sure.
That's maybe that's my answer.
Yeah, and if you're a focused wrestling fan, maybe you don't care about anything else. But the people that we want to come into the category to grow it, to get it to the levels that we expect it to be at, those are going to be crossover fans from sports and other categories, right? They're going to come over and cross over. And just like I would say when I do the shows, just having the stuff in the case for them to see it so that they see it for the first time and they say, oh, I didn't know they made this type of card of this guy, right? They don't know that they want it until they see it. And then they'll have to do their research, of course, to see, how rare it is or what it goes for. But that's like the entry point for them. And then what I'm noticing too is like, unless the card is very reasonably priced, a lot of them will want to trade into the card because they don't want to take a financial risk. They can trade a card that they already have the money invested. They can trade it into it. And then that's how they kind of get their feet wet. That's what I'm seeing a lot right now. So I think as more of that takes place, then we'll see the community grow. But to be honest, like I go all the card shows, I'm like one of the few wrestling vendors out there, and I don't even have a large inventory myself right now. So it's going to take some time, and it's going to take some people really putting themselves out there to have the product, the inventory to educate the consumer.
You touched on something, and that's trading. That I want to just briefly touch on that before we move on to the next topic. That's kind of a thing I've been really trying to push, especially with wrestling card collectors, is trading, because a lot of people, they say they're priced out, they can't afford something. And I'm like, okay, no problem. Why don't you trade the stuff you don't want, whether it's high end, whether it's a dollar card, like, let's start working trades. I've had a ton of successful trades just through Instagram or Twitter. And obviously you got to be careful about that. It's different with you trading at the shows. So what's your opinion on trading? I think like now is a better time than ever to just go all in on trading with people.
Yeah, trading is less risk for sure because you already have the money invested and you might have a lot of appreciation in whatever card that you have, right? So you got upside there. And it's fun. A lot of people like to trade, right? You just got to find the deal that makes sense for both sides. And I would definitely encourage people to trade into wrestling cards if they want to. They might have to give up a little bit more, depending on the card that they're going for. But I think that's a great way for people to kind of get their feet wet if they don't want to put out the cash for it. And you'll be surprised. You could work deals. Like I'm always telling people, I'm always willing to work any type of deal. Let's just talk about it. Let's talk about it. Let's see where it goes. I made videos about how to approach people at shows and how to negotiate trades and things like that. So if people feel uncomfortable, there's content out there to kind of teach you how it's done.
Right. Okay. So what's your thought on the current state of wrestling cards, whether that's designs, popularity? I'm going to let you just kind of take this where you want it. Just like wrestling cards, whether it's like AEW, Upper Deck, or if you're looking at vintage stuff, just like what is top of mind for your current state of wrestling right now and your interests?
Top of mind for me right now, because I'm a WWE guy. I like AEW, but I'm a WWE guy. So top of mind is to see what Panini is going to do with the brand. Okay. I really want high-end wrestling cards. When Topps came out, Topps Chrome was cool. Topps Finest was cool. But the problem with collecting modern day wrestling cards is all these guys keep getting released.
Yes.
Karrion Kross is like,
absolutely.
You go in on it and you want to see your guy, be the champion or whatever, so you can follow him, you feel connected, and suddenly they get released. So that's a big issue for me right now. Imagine this. Imagine you're collecting basketball cards and every player you collect gets injured and they're out for the season or they retire. They never, it's like you can't get any traction to that. So I'm focused more on the legends because, you can't
going anywhere,
guys. So I'm focused. I'm hoping that Panini will put out high end product of the legends of all the guys that we love. I'm hoping that I'm not a big fan of the new AEW cards that came out. I think the designs, they just don't hit with me. So I'm hoping that Upper Deck will also put out high-end cards for that, where they make it a little bit more collectible, I would say. As far as vintage cards go, vintage cards are interesting play if they're graded, if they're high grades. So like I'm looking at like if I can get like PSA 10s of like the 1987, 1985. I think the 1982 set is it's already established. You know,
It's
that's not
the
going
wrestling card set.
Yeah.
Like it's my favorite set in the world.
Yeah, people know about that, so that's not going anywhere. So that's cool to see that. I'd like to see more vintage wrestling cards come out pre 1982. That would be pretty cool. But in order for wrestling to really take off, I think these companies, they really have to put out high-end wrestling products. The only one I can really think of is the Topps Transcendent set that came out. I love that set. It's beautiful. On card, autos, numbered, everything. But that has to be a little bit more, there needs to be more promotion behind that. Like that set came out and it was like an afterthought.
I think I've seen one advertisement ever in the history of wrestling for a WWE card, and it was when it was like a NXT Chrome or something like that years ago. Like they had it on an NXT show for a blip, but AEW has done a phenomenal job promoting their product. And if WWE doesn't step it up with this Panini stuff, there's three things I have since we're talking about this. Panini needs to do a better job promoting with WWE crossover there. There's got to be legends in the checklist. If they do not have legend and big name legends, even if they're not autos, if they don't have legends, the set is going to fall flat like real quick because of what we just talked about. And then the other thing I've seen that are already complaints within the wrestling card space are sticker autos. Everyone hates the sticker autos, and we've already seen that that's what they're going to be putting out because we've seen some talent already signing. So any take on any of that stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I think they have to. Well, I mean, they're treating it like the other sports, but I think that the consumer is more educated, more savvy now. Like sticker autos, that's like entry level now. But that was cool back in like 2019, 20, whatever, right? But that stuff, like people don't want it anymore, and they have to listen to the community and have to give the community what they want if they want us to buy these things. Otherwise, because they're expensive too. Like when these products come out, they're not cheap. So they got to give us what we want, and when they do that, that will create the demand, which for these products, which will overtake the supply and raise it. So I just think that it's going to take like one groundbreaking set to come out that everybody talks about, everybody starts collecting, and people pay big money for, and then that can kind of start the ball rolling.
I think it could be Prism. I really do. I'm very excited, but as we've both talked about, if they don't have the checklist that is gonna get the eyeballs, so to speak, it could fall really flat.
Yeah, and they gotta make guys that wrestle. Like I don't know, they gotta coordinate somehow where they gotta stop releasing all these big stars when their products come out.
Yeah, that's become a little bit of a mess. Let's switch gears to something totally different. Hobby positivity. And I know this is something you've been experiencing at the time of recording more recently than I have, but I'll get on Twitter and I just see people complaining, I can't find blasters, I can't afford this card. And I'm, I get really tired of it. I try to be as respectful as possible, but I also have like opinions like, hey, blasters aren't the end all be all. You're probably not going to get a good ROI anyway. So there's just a lot. And then there's scams and people accusing other people of doing bad deals, as you said, the bad actors. So like, how are you maintaining level head in the hobby despite all the stuff around you? I'm a huge proponent of just shutting out, like not being ignorant to what's going on around you, but just shutting it out and doing your thing. So how's that been for you?
Yeah, this is why I kind of started my content, because when I was collecting, before I started posting and making content, I was just like everybody else. I was flipping cards, I was making money, and it was great. Right. Then the prices started to go down, and when the prices started to go down, people started to panic, and they say, oh, they complain about this and this and that, right? And my background outside of collecting is, I study investment strategy. I invest in other types of things, so I am able to. I've seen other markets, how they go up and down. So I wasn't really fazed by any of that stuff. That's when I started making these little posts on Instagram where I was trying to educate people to calm them down and say, hey, let's focus on the positive. Let's not focus on the negative, And then that transitioned into me the feedback on that was so great. Like people were saying, this is refreshing. Everybody's talking about the sports card market is tanked and this and that, right? All the content creators were making videos like that. So I got really good feedback on that. And that led me to make my videos. And when I made my videos, one of my principal concepts is in every introduction where I do talk about how we have to set high standards, gentlemen investors. We cannot focus on drama. We cannot focus on negative. We have to focus on pushing the hobby forward, okay, by having a very high standard of conduct that we all hold each other accountable to. If we have this very high standard of conduct, we hold each other accountable, that will weed out the bad actors. There's always going to be scammers out there that try to take advantage of us, especially as the hobby continues to have a lot of money circling through it. There's going to be criminals, bad actors coming in there to try to take advantage of us. So the best safeguard that we can have is to have very high standards of conduct among each other so that they can't meet those standards and they get called out easily for that. And I believe that if we do that, it will be easier for new people to come into the community. The community will grow, the hobby will grow because of that, and the values of our cards will rise. I always talk about that stuff. Now, as far as the negativity goes, I mean, we can't ignore it, right? I think that it's very important when something bad happens, like the Pokemon scandal, the subgraders, the guy that started, making like racial comments towards other people, right? We have to address that. We have to address it so that it doesn't happen again. We don't have to focus on it and just be super negative and talk about the drama and use it as a form of entertainment. No, we don't use it as a form of entertainment. We use it as a form of education, so that we say, okay, this is what happened. This is why it happened. Let's make sure that let's try to prevent it in the future. And I think that that's very important for that. But yes, I do also try to tune out as much negativity as I can. The people that complain about all these things, they're just mad because they, maybe they missed a boat or whatever. But those people, they can't adapt to change. Right?
That's it right there. Yeah.
And it's change. It's like, and it's not the fact that they're upset that they can't get these. They're upset that they can't get it and capitalize on the profit behind it, right? Like I said, with these, right? If these things, right, were readily available, nobody would want them. Okay, suddenly this goes up to like a $200 pop.
Right. Everybody
who tries to buy it, they're going to complain. Oh, I can't get my John Cena pop, right? So I think those people are complaining about that. And whether you like it or not, you're not going to change it. Nothing is going to change. You have to adapt. If you can't open blasters, okay, you might have to go collect singles. If you can't collect singles, maybe you join a group break or something. I don't know, whatever, but you got to adapt. And that's just, we can't slow down the progress of the hobby. It took like 20 years for the hobby to get to this point. We don't want it to go back to the ice age where things were worthless. We don't want that, guys. So you just have to adapt, roll with the punches, tune out the noise, like you said, and just conduct yourself like a gentleman in the hobby, and watch out for your fellow collectors too.
I want to talk about your content creation in just one moment, but you hit on a couple of things I want to touch on. You said everybody panicked when the market was going down. Do you think like that is a prime example of why the collectors win? Because I buy stuff that if it goes to, I don't want it to go to zero, but if it goes to zero, I still enjoy, and then I've got the Punisher, which is through the roof right now, and I still don't want to sell it. I've been trying to preach that to a lot of people, like, buy what you love has kind of become passe because they're like, no, buy what's going to make you money. I'm still in the camp of buy what you love, because what you just said, the market tanks, you've got what's going to make you happy. And as you said, it's probably going to appreciate in value anyway. Thoughts?
Yes. So when the market boomed, it was so easy to make money. You buy a card, next week you flip it for 2x. You get a card, you grade it, you flip it 10x, right? It was all good, and that's what brought a lot of people in. But when you go with profit first, you're gonna get burned at times. Okay, if the market is good, everybody's happy. But when the market goes down, those people that are over leveraged or that bought cards just for profit, they're gonna get burned. I always tell people, this hobby is the most fun way to make money in the world. We buy trade cards, the most fun, but it's not the easiest. Okay,
right?
There are easier ways to make money. Okay, if you're in this just to make money, go do something else. Okay, if you're in this for the fun of it and you make money and that's part of your process, yes, you can do very well for yourself. And a lot of the people that were early in this market, they're just not experienced in investing or writing out down markets and things like that. A lot of them were kids. These kids, right? It always amazes me. I'm 39 years old, right? It amazes. I'll use this as an example. This is a Jordan Blue PMG.
It's a great card.
Okay? They get a card like this, and you say, "Hey, how much it is?" Right? And they say, "Oh, I want $20,000 for this card." And these are like teenagers, basically. They don't have a concept of how hard it is to make money. Okay, they never worked before or whatever. They don't understand like $5,000 or even $1,000 is a lot of money, and they're basically playing around with play money. And then when that dried up, suddenly they got really negative about it because they didn't understand how the markets work. So that's why I think it's very important to educate, especially young people, about what's going on so that they don't panic. Because if they panic sell or they do things to bring down a hobby, that hurts everybody. So I think education is a very important part of that. But just to circle back to what you're saying, if you're in the hobby, you got to collect what you like. I always tell people, collect what you like, and chances are, if you think it's cool, somebody else will think it's cool also. And if you see value in it, they will also see value in it. And that's the best way to transact. And then you're not going to be worried if the card that you got goes down because you like it, you enjoy holding it. And eventually, if you write it out, it'll probably go back up.
Yep, 100% agree. One other thing that I personally have done, and I think you do it too from watching your content, kind of throwing the negativity to the side, throwing the market stuff to the side, is being active, buying, selling, trading, because I'm still buying collections in down markets and still able to flip that collection of stuff maybe that I didn't want, but I'm in it for a cost that I know I could make some money on, even in a down market. It's a lot of work ethic. You've also talked about how possibly you're insane for as much time as you put into your cards and content, and I'm guilty of that as well. Yeah. So what do you think about just like work ethic, I guess, and activity? And I don't know about you, but sometimes the stuff that's going on around me, I don't care how bad it is. Like, I'm so focused on being active, whether, again, buying, selling, trading, sorting my PC, whatever. Activity will get you a long way in the hobby. Thoughts?
Yes, I think that if you want to be successful, you have to be active and you have to be consistent with your activity. Okay. We call this, people call this investments and things like that, but really this is a hobby. Some genius, some marketing genius switched out the word hobby and put investment. And then suddenly all these people came in, and that's what made it grow. But we have to understand that this is a hobby. You have to love what you do. So like you spoke, like for me, this is almost like a full-time job for me, basically. Yes, like same. Everything, my real work, my real life responsibilities, that gets in the way of this. And maybe that's not the way to look at it, but that's what I'm doing right now.
Agreed.
But you spoke about being consistent. So I always tell people this too. The game is the same. It's just the numbers are different from where we were last year. If people still talk about prices last year, things like that, you got to switch out of that. You got to switch out and do, even if you have to reset your entire collection, go back to zero and start over. If you apply those same principles today, you can do well for yourself. But one thing that I always tell people is like, just be consistent with your buying, like you said. One thing that I'll talk about, this is like a little snippet for people who have made it this long in the podcast. Think about dollars cost averaging. Okay.
Yes.
You buy every month over the course of the year. It doesn't matter if the market is up or down, everything will average out, and you'll probably be able to do well that way. So think about it that way. A lot of people try to time the market. Impossible. We never know when it's going to go up, down, correction, crash, whatever, right? But if you're just consistent with your activity, you're buying, selling, trading, you're going to be able to do well for yourself. Okay. But you got to, and this applies to anything in life. This applies to anything, your work, investing in stocks or whatever. If you're just consistent with your activity, going over time, then you will do very well for yourself. The people that usually get burned are the ones that can't take the heat, and they get out, they quit. And then they blame the the hobby for whatever it is.
Right.
But the people that do very well are the people that are consistent and are here, every month, every year, and that's how they do well.
Yeah, playing the long game, so to speak, instead of looking for the quick flip. Speaking of being successful, let's talk about your content. And man, you've like just kind of to the moon, so to speak. Talk about your channel, talk about how you got started, why you got started. You talked about it a little bit. And then this kind of meteoric rise where, you know, it seems like you didn't start too long ago. And the next thing I know, you're like way over 4,000 subscribers on your YouTube page. So how's that been for you?
It's been a wild ride, to be honest. Like, I feel like I slipped on a banana peel and suddenly I'm here. I made my first video right after the national, I think. And I only made the video. I was very hesitant to even put out YouTube content because I just I'm reserved and I'm private. Okay, even though it may not seem like that, I am reserved and I'm a private person. But I was making these little posts on Instagram where I would write out long posts of valuable information to get people to calm down, and people loved it. But people said my posts were too long. They didn't want to read it. They were lazy. They wanted me to make videos. And a friend of mine, she goes by Mama Breaks. She said, "Can you make videos for us?" And I said, you know, I said at the time, I was like, okay, if I get to 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, I mean on Instagram, I'll make it. And at that time, I was like at 600. So I didn't think that was going to be possible, right? I didn't think people were going to follow me. Suddenly after the national, boom, right up to over 1,000. I was like, oh crap. So I said, all right, I obligated myself to do it. So then I started making a series of videos, and I was just transcribing my Instagram post to video. And that hit, you know, that resonated with a lot of people. And then my subscriber count just started growing and growing and growing. And I just kept getting encouragement from people. And that just kind of fueled me to make more and more content. And then before I knew it, I'm at like 4,000 subscribers, right? And then I get people reaching out to me, telling me how valuable my information is. I have people who come up to me at shows thanking me. I've got companies that want me to, you know, promote things. And it's like, what's going on here, right? And to myself, to like, you know, I still think that this is all silly, you know, in terms of like, you know, the amount of attention that I'm getting. But now I feel obligated as maybe like a representative of the hobby, where I have to educate people a certain way. I have to speak out on certain issues. I feel like that obligation, and I'm taking a more of a leadership role, I would say, and I'm using my platform to speak out on issues like that. And I'll continue to do this as long as people, you know, watch my videos. Then I'll just continue to do it. Believe me, I don't want to do it. It's like, it's time consuming. It is time consuming. It's like every day I got to do something else. But I feel like if my position right now is to help grow the hobby in this way, I'm happy to be a part of it. Obviously, I can't keep up this pace, right? I told myself I'm going to go hard until the national this year and see where I am. And maybe I can take a break just so I can just like relax, you know, but I'll just keep doing it as long as I keep getting positive feedback. If my subscriber count keeps growing and I get opportunities coming my way, I will still continue to do this. And I think it's been a crazy ride.
Yeah, and you know, you talked about it takes a lot of time, effort, and energy. And I don't have near the following you do, and I've run into that same thing. But it's just what you said. Like, I look around me and I'm like, there's like 2 other people talking about wrestling cards. If I don't keep doing it, nobody's going to do it. So onward and upward.
You want me to start talking about wrestling cards? I can do it.
Only if it's your passion. That's what I'm a huge believer of. Like, you know, if something tickles your fancy a certain day and you want to talk about a specific wrestling card, then go for it. But so actually creating the content itself, I've kind of put out a call to action to the wrestling card community. Start making content, whether that's blogs, writing, like kind of how you started, whether that's a podcast and just literally recording on your phone and posting it, or doing videos. What kind of advice, suggestions, or anything like that do you have for the wrestling card community as far as starting to create content?
I would say the first thing that comes to mind is post pictures of cool cards. There's a lot of cards out there people don't know about. You know, so if you see a card at a card show, take a picture of it. If you acquire a really cool card, post pictures of it, because if people see it and they're like, oh, that's cool, they're going to want it. And that drives demand. And then if there's cards there that, like, let's just say, for example, I'll use an example. Let's just say, I don't know, 1986 Monte cards, right?
Sure.
But maybe people don't know what that is. Maybe if somebody wants to make a video educating people about that, maybe do an unboxing or something like that, just put out content, because I guarantee there are people out there that are going to be looking for this stuff, and they're going to want to see what a 1986 unboxing looks like. You know,
Right.
they're going to want to know the history of 1982 wrestling cards. They're going to want to know, they're going to want to see a Topps Chrome box break, right? People will consume the content if you put it out there, but we just have to do it, right? Even if you don't think that anybody's going to watch it, put it out there and see what happens. It doesn't cost us anything except a little bit of effort and time to do this. It's free to do all the stuff. So there's no reason for us not to promote this as much as we can. And I would say also one thing that's worked very well for me with my content is just be honest and genuine and show your passion for it. And people like that. It's a form of entertainment. Right. So if you can do that for like any specific type of wrestling card, then I think that will draw a lot of attention also. And, after I get off my Marvel kick is my next thing is going to go towards wrestling. Probably one of my goals this year is to find a high grade 1982 Hogan. So if I'm going to find one at a card show, I'll film some content around it and it'll be cool. And maybe I'll go on a wrestling rabbit hole kick.
That would definitely be enjoyable because there's a lot of people that want that card and they think it's unattainable. So it would, maybe they can vicariously live through you to get it.
Yes.
As we get towards the end of this interview, what kind of closing words do you have for the wrestling card community? And this is totally up to you, whatever you want to say, whether it's something you'd like to buy, something you're interested in. Like, what kind of advice do you have for them as we continue to build the community even larger? And as the wrestling card segment, we haven't seen the dollar amounts hit the highs, but we've seen more people in it now.
I would say the best way to kind of grow our community for wrestling collectors is to educate non-wrestling card collectors. Okay. Because there are a lot of wrestling collectors. I mean, look at like every taping, every live taping, there's like 10,000 people there, right?
Yeah.
So we just have to educate them. Maybe we can pull them away from the wrestling figures a little bit. Zack Ryder, Matt Cardona, Brian Myers, they talk about cards all the time. I don't know if you guys pay attention to his Instagram. He's buying all these PSA 10 cards, right? So maybe those guys will be the influencers that draw in the other crowd. And we just have to keep talking about it. We have to keep posting about it, put that content out there so people that are interested, they can find it easily and they can consume it, and then they can go down that rabbit hole. To circle back to what I was saying before about people who want to get into wrestling, right? When they start watching like highlights of their guys, they'll do the same thing with cards. If they want to start collecting wrestling cards, they'll watch unboxing videos or Instagram posts and things like that. They'll learn about it. And then they'll go down that rabbit hole. So that's the best way that we can do it. Basically, just keep promoting it with the same passion that we all have. Like, I know you're passionate. I'm passionate, right? We have to tell other people. We have to show other people that passion, and then they will get passionate about it, and it's infectious. And that's the best way that we can grow our community. If we grow the community first, then the outlier people will start to come in, and that's when the demand will exceed the supply. When the demand for these products exceeds the supply, that's when the prices will go up. But believe me, when the prices go up, you will see a gold rush of people coming in there, and it's going to be wild west for a little bit. But when it settles, the community wrestling card community will be bigger for it, and then it can start to build off of that.
What a great place to stop the interview, Mr. Dan Nguyen, the Great Curator. Let everybody know where they can find you.
You can find me on Instagram, The Great Curator. You can find me on YouTube, The Great Curator. I have a TikTok also, but I'm just growing that. And then I just started Whatnot. So you can find me on Whatnot, The Great Curator with underscores, okay, no spaces. Find me that. I sell wrestling cards on there also. So I have a good time. I try to do that consistently every week. But the biggest thing is just find me on YouTube. That's where I make most of my content.
Dan, thanks for coming on. Thanks for giving me your time, because I know time is money for a lot of people, especially me and you both. We've got really busy schedules. So thanks for your content, and thanks for coming on the show and hopefully helping out the wrestling card community.
I appreciate everything you do, Zane, and thank you for having me on.
Thank you. Thanks again to the Great Curator, Dan Nguyen, for joining me what a great conversation that was. It was an honor to have him on. I'm just such a huge fan of his approach to the hobby. Collector mindset first, but then always willing to let go of things as need be to get even better stuff for his collection. But also being aware of markets, and if he thinks he can find a card down the road selling into a hot market because you can buy it again later when it's lower, and realizing there are some stuff that he may not get back, so maybe he doesn't sell those at the time even in a hot market. Just a lot to learn from, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. Make sure to check out Dan on Instagram and check out his YouTube page as well. Links below in the show notes to all of that stuff. Let Dan know that you enjoyed his appearance on the Wrestling with Cards YouTube channel. And while you're down there checking out the links of where to find Dan, check out the links to all the ways you can help show your support for my content. I spoke earlier in the video, there's links to the podcast, links to Patreon, links to buy me a coffee if you so choose. My eBay store links are down there, and of course all the social platform links are there. And feel free to tag me if you want to share this video on social media. Tag me in it, let me know what you think. If you think it's awesome, you think it's terrible, hey, it doesn't matter. Tag me in it and I'll respond. And after you're done checking out the links in the show notes, make sure to click the videos on the screen for more great wrestling card content, and we'll see you in those videos.